I expected to find the gates closed to us. Instead, you found that our men had already taken the city. What of it? Not our men. The lion of the Lannisters flew over the ramparts, not the crowned stag. They had taken the city by treachery. Treachery was a coin the Targaryens knew well. Lannister paid them back in kind. It was no less than they deserved. I shall not trouble my sleep over it. You were not there. There was no honour in that conquest. Eddard Stark and King Robert Baratheon. Game of Thrones Chapter 12. Eddard 2. The Battle of the Trident, in effect, was the killing blow for House Targaryen during Robert's rebellion. With the smashing of the Loyalist army and the death of Prince Rhaegar at the Ruby Ford, the path was now clear for the rebels to march directly on King's Landing. While the men of the Reach, under the leadership of Mace Tyrell, had not taken part in the Trident as they were besieging Storm's End, at this point in time they were too few and too far away to put down the rebels. As Robert Baratheon had picked up a minor wound during the battle, it was left to the young Lord of Winterfell, Eddard Stark, to lead the vanguard of the rebel host on the march to King's Landing. There was only one thing that could prove a challenge for Eddard and the rebels. It seemed at last that Tywin Lannister, Lord of Casterly Rock, had finally made a move, and many feared he had listened to the pleas of his former friend, King Aerys II Targaryen, and would now march on King's Landing to stop the rebels. While the total Lannister host was smaller than the combined rebel army, they were fresh, and under the command of Lord Tywin, arguably the best battle commander of his generation. If he was indeed coming to the aid of King Aerys, despite his forces' small number, he would still be a real threat to the rebels, and could become a banner for the shattered loyalists to rally to. Lord Tywin sent no word of what his intent was to Aerys or the rebels. Thus Lord Eddard began the march, not knowing if he would be facing a friend or a foe. It must also be recalled that when word of the Trident had reached Aerys, he had already been preparing for defeat, having placed caches of wildfire around King's Landing. In the Mad King's mind, if he could not hold the city, then no one could have it. He would burn it to ash in one last show of the power of House Targaryen. Queen Rhaella, now heavily pregnant, and Prince Viserys had already been moved to Dragonstone for their own safety. Some have put forward that in this act of martyrdom by Aerys, he hoped to kill enough of the rebel commanders that his remaining loyal lords would then rally behind Prince Viserys and crush the rebels in their disorganized panic. But who can truly know the mind of the Mad King and his intentions? Fearing the Dornish had betrayed him at the Trident, Aerys had also moved Princess Elia Martell and Rhaegar's young children, Rhaenys and Aegon, to the Red Keep, perhaps using them as shields from what he saw as Dornish betrayal. All I did was for House Lannister, always, for years. Your Lord Father, ask him, I was ever his true servant. 'Twas I who bid Aerys to open his gates. So, the sack of King's Landing was your work as well. For the realm, once Rhaegar died, the war was done. Grand Maester Pycelle and Tyrion Lannister, A Clash of Kings, Chapter 25. Tyrion 6. 2 weeks had passed since the Trident and the death of Prince Rhaegar, when dust blew into the sky and the hills beyond King's Landing as an army approached this tinderbox of a city. No one knew if they were friend or foe. In the distance, the scarlet and gold lion banner of House Lannister came into sight. Tywin Lannister, Lord of Casterly Rock, had beaten Eddard Stark and the rebels to the capital. He appeared at the gate of King's Landing with a force of 12,000 men from the Westerlands, more than enough to be able to hold and defend the city in the event of an assault by the rebels. It seemed to many that despite the animosity between Aerys and Tywin, Tywin had been the answer to his old friend's prayers. Many assumed Tywin's loyalty was with Aerys and requested entrance into the city, but perhaps seeing the situation for what it truly was, Lord Varys, the Spider, the Master of Whisperers, told the king to keep the gates closed or face his doom. It was Grand Maester Pycelle who convinced the king to open the gates to Tywin. Given the close working relationship between the Grand Maester and Lord Tywin, the idea Pycelle would be involved in Tywin's plot is not a surprise. Aerys ordered the gates open, and in an instant the Lannister forces began to sack the city, killing people of all ages and abusing women and children alike. A hand-picked group of men by Tywin raced to the Red Keep on horseback to storm the walls, while the defenders were still disorganized. Tywin Lannister had chosen his side, and it was not that of the king. All hope for Aerys was now truly lost. I saw King's Landing after the sack. Babes were butchered that day as well, and old men, and children at play. More women were raped than you can count. Draw a moment to Daenerys Targaryen, A Storm of Swords, Chapter 23. Daenerys 2. Inside the walls of the Red Keep, Tywin Lannister's eldest son, Sir Jaime Lannister the Kingsguard, was one of the few white cloaks still in the city after the Battle of the Trident, and thus had the duty of protecting the king. Knowing that King's Landing would fall to his father, now the gates had been opened, Jaime pleaded with the Mad King to allow him to treat with Tywin for a peaceful outcome, but instead, Aerys ordered Jaime to kill his own father instead. When a man joins the White Cloaks, they forego any alliance to their own house and kin. But even so, this surely puts Sir Jaime in a testing position, pushing any man to his limits. With the Lannister forces sacking the city, Aerys held an audience with his new hand of the king, Wisdom Rosart, the head of the Alchemists Guild, who had produced such vast quantities of wildfire for the king. Now, what happened next is debated heavily to this day, and the exact circumstances of how Jaime Lannister became the Kingslayer are only known to the man himself. Some say that Sir Jaime was more loyal to his father than his king, and thus struck down Aerys. But there is another version of this story, one only very few know or speak of. It is said that a messenger informed Sir Jaime of Wisdom Rosart's meeting with the king, and that he had just that moment left the throne room. Given the current situation, Jaime knew what this would mean, that Aerys did intend to burn King's Landing with wildfire. Witnesses at least have stated that Sir Jaime found Rosart at the postern gate of the keep, killing him before he could leave the castle and give the order for the wildfire to be lit. With Rosart's death, the execution of the wildfire plot had temporarily been halted. Sir Jaime next went to the throne room of the Red Keep, where the Mad King was waiting, where he informed him that he killed Rosart. In shock, it is believed Aerys attempted to flee onto his throne, but Sir Jaime hauled Aerys off the steps and slashed his throat, killing the Mad King before he could find another to send a message to the pyromancers. While this version of events is the lesser-known tale of Aerys' death and Sir Jaime Lannister's role in it, it should not wholly be discounted. Did Sir Jaime kill his king? Yes. Are his motivations unknowable? Yes. But in both versions of events, one thing is clear. Aerys was dead, and the wildfire was not lit due to the actions of Jaime Lannister, whatever they may have truly been. What happened in the direct aftermath of Aerys' death, with much more certainty, as just in time to witness Aerys' death, several knights from the Westerlands, including Sir Ellis Westerling and Lord Roland Crakecool, burst into the hall. One thing was clear to all. Sir Jaime Lannister had killed King Aerys, and with that, Jaime Lannister became forever known as the Kingslayer. Jaime ordered his father's men to spread the news that Aerys was dead. Roland asked Jaime if they should proclaim a new king. It is said for a moment, Jaime hesitated and considered Prince Viserys Targaryen, who had technically been Aerys' new heir after the death of Rhaegar, especially if Rhaegar had indeed been disinherited as Aerys had intended. In that moment, Sir Jaime Lannister perhaps changed the outcome of Robert's rebellion, realizing both Prince Viserys and Prince Aegon descended from Aerys. He told Roland to proclaim whoever he liked. Climbing the steps of the Iron Throne, Jaime sat himself down with his sword across his knees to await who would come to claim the throne he had sworn to protect. Meanwhile, Lannister soldiers were fighting the remaining loyalists on the serpentine steps of the Red Keep and in the castle's armory. But the day in truth had been won by the rebels. When Lord Eddard Stark did finally arrive at King's Landing from the Trident, he found the city gates open to him as he led his army of Northmen through the King's Gate. He rode up through the city to the Red Keep and into the very throne room his father and brother had been murdered in at the orders of the Mad King. Eddard entered the throne room and without saying a word, stared at Jaime Lannister until the latter got up from the Iron Throne. Jaime told Lord Stark he'd been keeping the throne warm for Robert. King's Landing had been sacked, the Red Keep fallen, the Mad King dead. The rebellion was all but won, and House Targaryen destroyed. But even at war's end, there will be horrors that would leave a shadow over the realm for decades to come.